The council chamber stretched wider than any building on Earth. Ji-hoon stood in the center of it, feeling small. Above him, floating platforms held representatives from 40 different alien species. Their eyes, some with 2, some with 6, some with clusters he could not count, all watched him. Ji-hoon wore his uniform. The blue and white colors of the United Earth Navy looked plain compared to the shimmering robes and exotic armor around him. He kept his hands behind his back, and his face calm. Inside, his heart hammered against his ribs. "Captain Ji-hoon of the vessel Resolute." A voice echoed through the chamber. It came from Vexithara, a being that looked like a mantis crossed with something from a nightmare. Its translator turned the clicks and chirps into perfect English. "You stand accused of 17 violations of the Galactic Combat Accords. How do you answer?" Before Ji-hoon could speak, Hana stepped forward. She was the diplomatic liaison, trained for moments like this. Her voice carried confidence, even though Ji-hoon could see the tension in her shoulders. "The United Earth Navy acted in defense of civilian populations," Hana said. "We followed our protocols to protect innocent lives." Vexithara's mandibles clicked together. "Your protocols are not recognized by this council. The Galactic Combat Accords have governed warfare for 3,000 years. Every civilized species follows these laws." A holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. Ji-hoon watched as images from the battle at Outer Rim Colony 7 played for everyone to see. He recognized the moment when his forces had set the ambush. The Kresh soldiers walked into the trap, and human forces struck from every direction at once. "Ambush tactics," Vexithara announced. "Article 4 prohibits hidden attacks. Combat must be announced and conducted in designated battle zones." The images changed. Now they showed Lieutenant Minho's squad using the colony's infrastructure as cover. They fired from buildings, retreated through tunnels, and used the civilians' own homes as strategic positions. "Use of civilian structures for military advantage," Vexithara continued. "Article 7 strictly forbids this practice." More images. Human soldiers wearing camouflage that matched the rocky terrain. Explosives hidden underground. Psychological broadcasts designed to create fear in enemy ranks. Each one brought a new accusation, a new article violated. Ji-hoon watched the council members react. A being made of what looked like living crystal dimmed with apparent disgust. A floating jellyfish creature pulsed red. A species with feathers covering its body ruffled them in clear agitation. They did not understand. They could not understand. The defendant forces also employed what humans call scorched earth tactics, Vexithara said. The display showed human forces destroying supply lines and infrastructure to prevent enemy use. "This violates Articles 9, 12, and 15. Destruction of resources prolongs suffering and creates unnecessary hardship." Ambassador Taeho sat in the human delegation section, his silver hair catching the chamber's artificial light. He was older than Ji-hoon by 30 years, and his face showed every one of them. Ji-hoon caught his eye. Taeho gave the smallest nod. "Wait, not yet." A new voice joined the discussion. This one belonged to Counselor Reshnak, a being whose species Ji-hoon had never seen before. It looked almost human, but its skin shifted colors like oil on water. "I have reviewed the casualty reports," Reshnak said. "The human forces killed or wounded 8,000 Kresh soldiers. The Kresh forces killed 63 humans. This ratio is disturbing. It suggests a level of violence that exceeds necessary force." Hana spoke again. "Those 8,000 Kresh soldiers were attempting to exterminate 50,000 human civilians. Our forces were outnumbered 5 to 1. We did what we had to do." "Arlie, you did what your instincts demanded," Vexithara replied. "And that is precisely the problem. The Galactic Combat Accords exist to prevent warfare from devolving into savage brutality. We have evolved beyond the need for total war. We conduct our conflicts with honor and restraint." Ji-hoon felt his jaw tighten. Honor. Restraint. These words from species who had never faced extinction, who had never watched their cities burn. who had never been forced to choose between fighting dirty and dying clean. The display changed once more. This time it showed the aftermath. Kresh bodies lay scattered across the colony's perimeter. Human soldiers moved through the wreckage, checking for survivors. One image focused on a young human soldier. Ji-hoon recognized him as Private Daishim from Minho's squad, kneeling beside a wounded Kresh soldier, offering water. Even in victory they showed cruelty, Vexthera said. They allowed enemy combatants to suffer, rather than ending combat when victory was assured. That soldier was giving aid, Hana protested. He was showing mercy. He was prolonging a conflict that should have been resolved through proper channels, Vexthera countered. According to Article 3, when one force achieves clear superiority, combat must cease, and negotiations must begin. Your forces continued fighting until the enemy retreated completely. The council chamber filled with murmurs. The various species discussed among themselves in languages the translators could not fully capture. Ji-hoon heard words like barbarians and primitives float through the noise. Finally, the head counselor called for silence. She was a being of pure energy contained in a crystalline suit, and when she spoke, everyone listened. Captain Ji-hoon, does the defendant wish to speak? Ji-hoon looked at Taeho again. This time, the ambassador gave a different signal, a slight shake of his head. Not the right time. I defer to my diplomatic representative, Ji-hoon said. The head counselor's energy form flickered. Very well. This council will deliberate on the evidence presented. The human delegation will have the opportunity to mount a defense. However, I must warn you the evidence is damning. Humanity's actions at Outer Rim Colony 7 violate the most fundamental principles of civilized warfare. If we cannot trust you to follow our laws, we cannot permit you to remain in the Galactic Alliance. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Expulsion from the Alliance meant no trade, no technology sharing, no protection from hostile species. It meant Earth would stand alone in a galaxy full of threats. As the council adjourned for deliberation, Ji-hoon walked back to the human delegation area. Other members of his crew waited there. Commander Yuna from Strategic Command had arrived from Earth. Lieutenant Minho stood at attention, his face showing the same calm that Ji-hoon forced onto his own features. Hana approached Taeho. They are not going to listen to reason. They have already decided we are guilty. They have decided we are different, Taeho corrected. He looked at Ji-hoon, then at the others. Ji-hoon thought about the colonists he had saved. He thought about the children who were alive because his forces had fought without honor, without restraint, without following rules written by species who had never known desperation. He would do it again, even knowing what it would cost. Even standing here, accused and judged, he would make the same choice. The galaxy had its laws, but the galaxy had never been to Earth. The memory came to Minho in the quiet hours of the station night. He sat in his temporary quarters, staring at the wall, but seeing something else entirely. Outer Rim Colony 7, 6 months ago. Before the trial. Before any of this became a political nightmare, the alarm had woken him at 0400 hours. Not the scheduled wake-up call, but the emergency klaxon that meant incoming hostiles. Minho had rolled from his bunk, grabbed his rifle, and sprinted toward the command center in less than 30 seconds. Colony 7 was home to 50,000 humans, families, children, people who had left Earth to build something new among the stars. They had farms and schools and a small hospital. They were not soldiers. The Kresh fleet had appeared without warning. 15 warships against the colony's 3 defense platforms. The platforms had lasted 8 minutes. Minho remembered standing in the command center, watching the displays as Kresh drop ships descended toward the colony. He remembered the colony administrator, a woman named Sora, her voice shaking as she asked him what they should do. We follow the accords, she had said. We surrender. They will take the colony, but they will not kill us. The Galactic Combat Accords guarantee the safety of civilian populations. Minho had looked at the incoming data. 8,000 Kresh soldiers. The Kresh Empire did not officially recognize human colonies in this sector. To them, this was unclaimed territory. The accords did not apply. They are not here to occupy, Minho had told her. They are here to clear the land. Sora's face had gone white. She understood. The Kresh wanted this planet. They wanted it empty. Now, sitting in his quarters on the council station, Minho closed his eyes and remembered what came next. His squad had numbered 200 soldiers. Trained, yes. Equipped, yes, but 200 against 8,000. Following the accords would have meant announcing their positions, conducting combat in designated zones, allowing the enemy to prepare and respond according to established protocols. It would have meant a fair fight. It would have meant death. Instead, Minho had given different orders. Back on Earth, in a secure conference room, General Yuna reviewed the same battle from a different perspective. She sat with the War Council, 5 senior commanders who had seen humanity through the Resource Wars, the Mars Rebellion, and a dozen smaller conflicts. They want to know why we fight the way we do, one general said. He was old enough to remember when humanity had first met the galactic community. Yuna pulled up a display. Images filled the screen. Ancient armies clashing with swords and spears. Medieval sieges that lasted for years. Trenches from the First World War, cities reduced to rubble in the Second. The jungles of Vietnam, the deserts of the Middle East. Conflicts spanning thousands of years. They see barbarians because they have never needed to be anything else, Yuna said. Show me a galactic species that evolved fighting for every scrap of food. Show me one that survived ice ages and plagues and predators that hunted them in the dark. She changed the display. Now it showed Earth itself. Oceans that could swallow ships. Weather systems that could level cities. Earthquakes. Volcanoes. Hurricanes. And in every ecosystem. Predators. Tigers. Bears. Crocodiles. Sharks. Snakes. Spiders. Even the plants could kill you if you were not careful. Earth is a death world, another general said. We know this. The xenobiologists confirmed it. Our planet ranks in the top 3% for environmental hostility in the known galaxy. And we are a death world species, Yuna added. We evolved to survive where nothing should survive. We learned to hunt the hunters. We learned to endure what would kill softer beings. And worst of all, we learned to fight each other. That was the part the galaxy could not comprehend. Other species had conflicts. Yes. Territory disputes. Resource competition. But nothing like humanity's wars. Nothing like the systematic, total warfare that humans had perfected over millennia. The display showed more recent history. The resource wars that had nearly destroyed Earth before the unification. 3 billion dead. Entire regions rendered uninhabitable. Humanity had looked into the abyss and discovered something terrible. They were good at killing each other. Lieutenant Minho saved 50,000 people, Yuna said. He did it by ignoring every rule the galaxy says makes warfare civilized. And they want to punish him for it. Back on the council station, in the medical wing, Officer Nari prepared her testimony. She was a xenopsychologist, trained to understand the vast differences between human minds and alien ones. Her research filled dozens of files. She had studied the council species for 5 years, cataloging their psychological responses to stress, fear, and violence. The results were clear. Humans were different, dramatically different. When a Zelnari faced danger, its body released chemicals that induced calm. It allowed them to think clearly and negotiate rationally. When a Vrexian encountered a threat, it entered a state of deliberate assessment, weighing options with mathematical precision. When a human faced danger, their body dumped adrenaline into their bloodstream. Heart rate increased. Muscles flooded with oxygen. Pain response dulled. Rational thought took a backseat to survival instinct. Humans became faster, stronger, and more aggressive. They became dangerous. Nari had tested this herself. She had compared human stress responses to 15 other species. In simulated combat scenarios, humans consistently performed better under pressure. They made decisions faster. They adapted to changing circumstances more readily. They continued fighting effectively even when wounded or exhausted. The other species called it savage. Nari called it adaptation. She thought about Minho's report from Colony 7. He had described moving through the colony's tunnel system, setting ambushes, using the terrain to his advantage. His heart rate had stayed elevated for 6 hours straight. He had made hundreds of tactical decisions without hesitation. He had kept his squad coordinated while under fire from a superior force. Any other species would have collapsed from the stress. Humans called it Tuesday. In the human delegation quarters, Sora spoke with Ambassador Tejo. She had been brought from Colony 7 to testify. She wore simple clothes, not the formal attire of the council members, and her hands shook when she held her cup of tea. "I told him to surrender," she said quietly. "I told Lieutenant Minho that we should follow the Accords, that the galaxy would protect us." "What did he say?" Tejo asked. "He said the galaxy could not protect us from someone who did not care about its rules. He said the only way to save the colony was to make the Kresh afraid, to make them believe that taking this planet would cost more than it was worth." Sora set down her cup. Her hands were steadier now. He was right. The things his soldiers did, the ambushes, the traps, the psychological warfare. It was brutal. But it worked. The Kresh retreated. "My daughter is alive because Lieutenant Minho knew how to fight a war that the Accords say should not exist." Tejo nodded slowly. "The Council will ask you if you approve of his methods. I will tell them that I am a farmer, not a soldier. I will tell them that I do not understand military tactics, and I will tell them that when the Kresh came to kill my family, the Galactic Combat Accords did nothing to stop them. But Lieutenant Minho did." That night, Ji-hoon received a message from Earth. It was from his mother. She did not speak about the trial. She did not offer advice or comfort. Instead, she told him a story about his grandfather, who had fought in the resource wars. His grandfather had done terrible things. He had killed people who were once his neighbors. He had destroyed infrastructure that took decades to build. He had made choices that haunted him until the day he died. But he had survived. And because he survived, Ji-hoon's mother was born. And because she was born, Ji-hoon existed. "We are a species of survivors," his mother wrote. "That is both our curse and our gift. Do not apologize for being what Earth made you." Ji-hoon read the message 3 times before deleting it. Then he prepared for the next day's hearing. The council wanted an explanation for human warfare. He would give them the truth. Whether they could accept it was another matter entirely. The council chamber felt colder when the proceedings resumed. Ji-hoon noticed that several species had sent additional observers. Word had spread about the human trial. The gallery was packed with beings curious to see if Earth would be expelled. Ambassador Tejo stood and addressed the head counselor. His voice carried the weight of his years and the gravity of the moment. "This council has presented evidence of human violations. We do not dispute the facts. Instead, we request permission to provide context. We ask that you understand not just what we did, but why we did it." The head counselor's crystalline form pulsed with thought. "This council values understanding. You may proceed." Tejo gestured to a man in military dress uniform. "I call Major Jinwoo, historian of Earth's military conflicts." Jinwoo walked to the center of the chamber with the bearing of a soldier and the confidence of a scholar. He carried a datapad but did not look at it. He had memorized everything he needed to say. "Honored council members," Jinwoo began. "I will be brief. Earth's history is not like yours, where your species evolved in relative peace. Humanity evolved in constant struggle." A holographic display materialized. It showed Earth as it had looked thousands of years ago. Continents covered in ice. Massive predators roaming the landscape. Harsh weather systems battering the primitive human settlements. Humans developed intelligence as a survival mechanism, Jinwoo explained. "We were not the strongest species on our planet. Not the fastest. Not the most dangerous. But we could think. We could plan. We could work together to bring down prey 10 times our size." The display changed. Now it showed early human warfare, tribes fighting over resources, simple weapons made of stone and wood. And then we turned those skills on each other. For 10,000 years, humanity has been at war. Sometimes with nature, often with ourselves. Images flashed across the display. Ancient battles, medieval sieges, the trenches of World War I. Jinwoo did not shy away from the horror. He showed the council everything. A Vrexian representative interrupted. This proves our concern. Your species has a violent nature. Our species has a survivor's nature, Jinwoo corrected. Every species in this chamber evolved on worlds that allowed them to thrive. Earth did not allow anything, it demanded. Those who could not adapt died. Those who could not defend themselves were eliminated. Humanity learned warfare because the alternative was extinction. He changed the display again. This time it showed a comparison chart. On one side, the average death world statistics. On the other, Earth's numbers. Earth has more predator species per square kilometer than 97% of habitable worlds. Our weather systems are more violent, our diseases more virulent, our ecosystems more competitive. We call our planet home. Your scientists call it a nightmare. The chamber grew quiet. Jinwoo pressed his advantage. The siege of Stalingrad lasted 5 months. 1 million people died. The Battle of Normandy lasted 12 hours and changed the course of a global war. The Vietnam War taught us that a smaller force could defeat a larger one through unconventional tactics. We learned these lessons in blood. He showed them footage from Earth's wars. Not sanitized versions. The real thing. Soldiers fighting in cities. Guerrilla warfare in jungles. Urban combat that looked nothing like the orderly battles the council conducted. Several alien representatives looked away. The images were too much. You find this disturbing, Jinwoo said. Good. You should. This is what warfare looks like when survival is at stake. This is what happens when following the rules means dying, and this is what Lieutenant Minho drew upon when he defended Colony 7. When Jinwoo finished, the chamber sat in stunned silence. Taeho let the moment breathe before calling his next witness. I call Medical Officer Nari, specialist in xenopsychology. Nari approached with clinical precision. Where Jinwoo had been passionate, she was analytical. I will explain the human stress response, she said. When faced with danger, the human body undergoes specific physiological changes. Adrenaline floods the system. Heart rate increases to 180 beats per minute. Blood flow redirects to major muscle groups. Pain tolerance increases by up to 300%. She displayed brain scans comparing human neural activity during combat simulation with that of 5 other species. The differences were stark. Human decision-making actually improves under combat stress. We process threats faster. We react more quickly. Our bodies are designed for this. Every human carries the genetic legacy of ancestors who survived by fighting. A jellyfish-like counselor asked, "Are you saying humans cannot control this response?" "I am saying humans are optimized for it," Nari replied. "We can control it, yes. But asking us to ignore it is like asking a Zel Nari to ignore their calm response or a Vrexian to stop calculating odds. It is fundamental to our psychology." She showed more data. Recovery times from combat stress. Adaptive capacity in changing situations. The ability to function while wounded. In every measurable category related to combat effectiveness, humans exceed galactic averages by significant margins. This is not because we are more violent. It is because we evolved on a world that required us to be better at violence to survive. When Nari concluded, Taeho signaled for a brief recess. The council members conferred among themselves. Jihoon watched their body language. Some seemed thoughtful. Others remained rigid in their opposition. Then came the critical moment. Taeho recalled Jihoon to the stand. "Captain Jihoon, please tell the council in your own words why you violated the Galactic Combat Accords." Jihoon had prepared for this. He had rehearsed his answer. But standing there, under the gaze of 40 species, he discarded the prepared speech. He spoke from his heart. I had 200 soldiers under my command. The creche brought 8,000. I had civilian infrastructure and limited ammunition. They had warships and unlimited reinforcements. If I had followed the accords, I would have announced my position. I would have conducted combat in designated zones. I would have fought honorably. He paused, and 50,000 people would have died. The chamber was absolutely silent. The accords assume that both sides value life over victory. They assume that your opponent will follow the same rules. They assume that warfare is about political objectives, not extermination. The creche did not care about any of that. They came to take the planet. We were just in the way. Ji-hoon's voice hardened. So I set ambushes. I used civilian structures for cover. I employed psychological warfare to make them afraid. I did everything the accords prohibit. And I would do it again. Because the alternative was not defeat, it was genocide. Vexthera spoke up. You could have evacuated. You could have abandoned the colony. To where? Ji-hoon demanded. Earth is 6 months away by the fastest ship. We had 3 days before the creche arrived. There was no escape. There was only survival or death. Counselor Reshnok asked, Do you feel no shame for your actions? Ji-hoon met the counselor's shifting gaze. I feel pride. I kept my people alive. I fulfilled my oath to protect human lives. If that makes me a criminal in your eyes, then I am a criminal. But I am a criminal whose people are still breathing. The head counselor's energy form flickered intensely. Captain, you are asking this council to accept that humanity operates by different rules. That your methods, however brutal, are justified by your nature. This sets a dangerous precedent. I am asking you to recognize that different species face different circumstances, Ji-hoon replied. Your rules work for you because your evolution allows them to work. Our evolution demands something else. Taeho stepped forward again. The council has seen our history. You have heard our explanations. You understand that humanity is not cruel by choice, but adapted by necessity. We do not ask you to change your laws. We ask you to accept that when human lives are at stake, we must defend them in the only way we know how. He let that statement settle. We are not barbarians. We are survivors. And the galaxy needs survivors, whether it wants to admit it or not. The session ended with no decision. The council would deliberate overnight. As the humans filed out, Ji-hoon caught Sora's eye in the gallery. She had tears on her face, but she was smiling. Whatever the council decided, the truth was spoken. Humanity would not apologize for being what Earth had made them. The only question was whether the galaxy could accept that truth. The council deliberated for 18 hours. Ji-hoon spent that time pacing his quarters, while Minho sat perfectly still, meditating in the way he had learned during his military training. Hana reviewed legal documents she had already memorized. Each person dealt with the waiting differently, but the tension was the same. When the summons came, they returned to the chamber together. The galleries were even more crowded than before. Species from across the galaxy had sent representatives to witness the decision. This was not just about humanity anymore. It was about whether the Galactic Alliance would fracture over its own laws. The head counselor's crystalline form glowed brighter than before, indicating the energy she had expended in deliberation. This council has reviewed all evidence and testimony, she began. We have consulted our legal scholars. We have debated the philosophical implications. We have sought precedent in 3,000 years of galactic law. Ji-hoon felt his stomach tighten. We find that humanity did indeed violate the Galactic Combat Accords. The violations were numerous, severe, and deliberate. Under normal circumstances, this would result in immediate expulsion from the Alliance and sanctions against Earth. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Hana's hand clenched into a fist. However, the head counselor continued, we also acknowledge the unique circumstances of Earth's evolutionary history. We recognize that humanity faces challenges that our laws did not anticipate. Therefore, we offer a compromise. She paused, letting the word hang in the air. Humanity will remain in the Alliance under probationary status. All human military actions must be approved by a Council Oversight Committee. Human forces will undergo training in proper combat procedures, and most importantly, humanity will adopt the Galactic Combat Accords as their primary military doctrine. The words struck like a hammer. Ji-hoon's mind raced. Oversight committees. Training. Forced adoption of laws that would get humans killed. This was not a compromise. This was surrender with a different name. Taeho stood slowly. His face showed no emotion. But Ji-hoon had worked with the ambassador long enough to recognize the set of his jaw. Taeho was angry. "May I address the council?" Taeho asked. "You may," the head counselor replied. Taeho walked to the center of the chamber. He did not bring notes. He did not call witnesses. He simply stood there, an old man representing a young species, and spoke with absolute clarity. "This council has made its position clear. You acknowledge our history but demand we abandon the lessons we learned from it. You recognize our differences but insist we conform to your standards. You understand our challenges but offer solutions that ignore them." Vexthara's mandibles clicked. "We offer you a path to civilized conduct. You offer us a path to extinction," Taeho replied without heat. "Your oversight committee will deliberate while human colonies burn. Your training will teach our soldiers to die with honor instead of live with victory. Your accords will protect everyone except the humans trying to follow them." The head counselor's glow intensified. "Ambassador Taeho, you risk contempt of this council." "I risk nothing," Taeho said. "Everything is already at stake. So let me be perfectly clear about humanity's position." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from 40 species. "You claim Earth violated combat law." His voice carried to every corner of the vast space. "You are absolutely right." Silence fell like a physical weight. "That is exactly why we wrote our own." The chamber erupted. Aliens spoke over each other in dozens of languages. The head counselor called for order. But it took several minutes to restore calm. When quiet finally returned, Taeho continued as if there had been no interruption. "For the past 6 months, while you have been preparing this trial, humanity has been developing the Terran Combat Protocols, a comprehensive military doctrine written by a species that understands war's true nature." He gestured, and a new display appeared. Documents filled the holographic space. Thousands of pages of military law, carefully structured and thoroughly detailed. The Terran Combat Protocols acknowledge what the Galactic Accords ignore, that warfare is sometimes about survival, not politics. Our laws protect civilians. Our laws prohibit atrocities. Our laws establish ethical boundaries for military conduct. But our laws are written by survivors, for survivors. Young diplomat Unji stepped forward, carrying a datapad. She had been quiet throughout the trial, but now her voice rang clear. "The Terran Combat Protocols include 17 articles that mirror the Galactic Accords," she explained. "When human forces engage in conflicts between alliance members, we will follow galactic law. When we participate in council-sanctioned operations, we will operate under council authority." She paused for emphasis. "But when human lives face extinction-level threats, we reserve the right to defend ourselves by our own rules. We do not ask the galaxy to adopt our methods. We simply demand the right to survive using the tactics we know will work." Reshnok objected immediately. "This creates a legal nightmare. How do we determine when these extinction-level threats exist? Who decides when humans can ignore our laws?" "We do," Taeho said flatly. "Just as you decide when to enforce them. Just as you decide what constitutes civilized warfare. Just as you decided that your evolution gives you the right to write laws that work for you." He walked closer to the council platforms. "You want us to fight your wars your way. You want the benefit of human soldiers, our resilience, our adaptability, our effectiveness, but you want us neutered and controlled. That is not going to happen." The head counselor's form pulsed with what might have been anger. "You are in no position to make demands." "We are in the only position that matters," Taeho replied. "We are the ones you need. Not today. Perhaps. Not this year. But eventually, this galaxy will face a threat that does not care about your accords. A threat that does not negotiate. A threat that wants you dead, not defeated. He gestured to the display showing the Terran combat protocols. When that day comes, you will want humans who know how to fight dirty, who understand that survival matters more than honor, who can make the hard choices that your evolution prevents you from making. Engineer Sung activated a tactical simulation. The holographic display showed 3 recent conflicts. In each one, 2 scenarios played out side by side. One following the Galactic Accords, one following the Terran protocols. In every simulation, the Accord-following forces suffered catastrophic losses. Colony populations wiped out, military forces destroyed, resources captured by hostile forces. The protocol-following forces won. Not cleanly, not honorably, but they won. These are not theoretical exercises, Seung explained. These are real conflicts that happened in the past year. In each case, if human forces had followed your laws, human civilians would have died. We chose survival over compliance, and we would make that choice again. The council sat in silence, absorbing the simulations. Ji-hoon watched their reactions. He saw fear in some, anger in others. But in a few, he saw something else. Understanding, maybe even respect. Vex Thara spoke, its voice cutting through the quiet. You are asking us to accept 2 sets of laws, to create a precedent where species can choose which rules to follow. We are asking you to accept reality, Taeho responded. Different species have different needs. You evolved in peace. We evolved in war. Your laws reflect your nature. Our laws reflect ours. Both can exist without destroying the alliance. Unji added. The Terran combat protocols include strict oversight provisions. We will document every use of non-accord tactics. We will submit reports. We will accept review, but we will not accept a veto on our survival. The head counselor consulted with other senior council members. Their discussion went on for nearly an hour. Ji-hoon stood at attention the entire time, muscles burning, but he did not move. Finally, the head counselor spoke. This council requires time to consider this proposal. What you are suggesting is unprecedented. We cannot make this decision lightly. Take all the time you need, Taeho said. But understand that with or without your approval, humanity will defend itself. The only question is whether we do it as members of this alliance or outside it. As the session adjourned, Ji-hoon caught Taeho in the corridor. Was that wise? He asked. Threatening them? Taeho smiled grimly. I did not threaten them. I gave them a choice. They can have us as allies who follow our own combat doctrine, or they can have us as independent actors with no obligation to help them at all. And if they choose expulsion, then Earth stands alone, Taeho said. We have before. We can again. But Ji-hoon saw the concern in the old man's eyes. Standing alone was possible. It was also terrifying. The galaxy would decide humanity's fate. But humanity had made its position clear. They would not apologize for being survivors. The council took 6 days to reach a decision. 6 days during which humanity held its breath, and the galaxy watched to see what would happen. Ji-hoon spent those days preparing for 2 futures, one where Earth remained in the Alliance, and one where they did not. On the 7th day, the council reconvened. The chamber felt different this time. The tension had transformed into something else. Not acceptance, exactly, but a kind of resigned acknowledgement that the old certainties no longer held. The head counselor addressed the assembly. This council has deliberated extensively on the human proposal. We have consulted our historians, our legal experts, and our military advisors. What humanity asks is unprecedented in galactic history. Never before has a species requested exemption from our fundamental laws. Ji-hoon's hands remained steady behind his back, but his heart raced. However, the head counselor continued, we recognize that humanity represents something unique. Your evolutionary path differs significantly from established norms. Your capabilities, while disturbing, may have value. Therefore, this council proposes the following compromise. A new document appeared in the holographic display. We hereby establish the Alternative Combat Recognition Framework. Species whose evolutionary history demonstrates fundamental incompatibility with the Galactic Combat Accords may petition for recognition of alternative military doctrines. These doctrines must include civilian protections, prohibition of atrocities, and ethical guidelines. They must also include oversight mechanisms and regular review by council observers. The head counselor's glow softened slightly. Humanity becomes the first species granted this status. The Terran combat protocols are officially recognized as a valid military framework for human forces. Captain Ji-hoon and Lieutenant Minho are exonerated of all charges. However, humanity must submit quarterly reports on all military actions. Council observers will be assigned to major human military operations. And if evidence of true atrocities emerges, this recognition will be revoked immediately. The chamber remained quiet. 40 species processing what this meant. The Galactic Alliance had just fundamentally changed its nature. Tejo stood and bowed. On behalf of humanity, we accept these terms. We will prove worthy of the trust you place in us. See that you do, the head counselor replied. This council remains skeptical, but we are willing to learn. The trial ended. Ji-hoon returned to his ship. Minho went back to active duty. Hana began the work of establishing the oversight protocols. Life moved forward, but the real test came 6 months later. The Drakon swarm appeared at the edge of council space without warning. They were unlike anything the galaxy had encountered before. A hive mind species that did not communicate, did not negotiate, and did not recognize any authority except their own hunger. They consumed planets. Not colonized them. Consumed them. They stripped worlds of all biological matter and moved on, leaving dead rocks behind. The Council's fleets engaged using traditional tactics. They announced their presence. They attempted communication. They fought in designated zones with proper rules of engagement. The Drakon ignored all of it. They swarmed council ships with overwhelming numbers, sacrificed thousands of their own units without hesitation, and adapted to every strategy the council employed. In 3 weeks, the swarm destroyed 15 council fleets and consumed 4 planets. Billions died. The emergency session of the council lasted 12 hours. Species that had barely tolerated humanity's presence now argued about whether to request human assistance. Pride fought against desperation. Desperation won. General Yuna received the request at 0300 hours Earth time. By 0600, she was aboard a transport to the warfront. By the time she arrived, 2 more planets had fallen. The Council Military Command Center was in chaos. Admirals from a dozen species argued over tactics that had already failed. Yuna walked in wearing her combat uniform, and the room fell silent. General Yuna, a Vrexian admiral, greeted her stiffly. We have requested human tactical consultation. However, we must insist that your suggestions remain within accord parameters. Yuna looked at the tactical displays. The swarm was advancing on 3 fronts simultaneously. Council forces were retreating on all of them. How many ships have you lost following accord parameters? She asked. The admiral's color shifted. 147 vessels. How many planets? 6. Yuna turned to face the assembled commanders. You called me here because you are losing. You are losing because the Drakon do not care about your rules. They do not care about designated battle zones or proper combat procedures. They care about consuming everything in their path. She pointed at the displays. I can stop them. But not by following the accords. If you want me to fight your way, you do not need me. You need someone to help you draft surrender terms. Because that is where this is heading. The Vrexian admiral stiffened. The council has authorized consultation, not command. Then you will lose, Yuna said flatly. I am not being arrogant. I am being honest. The Terran combat protocols were designed for threats exactly like this. But using them means doing things that will horrify you. It means tactics that seem cruel. It means sacrifices that appear wasteful. It means fighting the way humans fight. She looked around the room. So decide now. Do you want to win, or do you want to feel civilized while you die? The silence stretched for nearly a minute. Then a crystal form counselor spoke. Ji-hoon recognized her as one who had voted in humanity's favor during the trial. What do you need? She asked. Full tactical command, Yuna replied. Access to all military assets. And no second-guessing my decisions, no matter how much they upset you. The Vrexian admiral started to object, but the head counselor's voice cut through the center. She had joined the session remotely, her crystalline form appearing as a hologram. General Yuna, you have command. The council will not interfere. Save our people. Yuna got to work. She reorganized the entire defensive strategy within 6 hours. Instead of meeting the swarm in open space, she established kill zones. Instead of preserving ships, she used them as mobile weapons platforms that could be abandoned if necessary. Instead of honorable combat, she set traps. Minho arrived 3 days later with a battalion of human marines. Yuna assigned them to teach council soldiers guerrilla tactics. The aliens learned reluctantly, horrified by the concepts of ambush and feigned retreat. But they learned. The first major engagement under Yuna's command took place near the planet Vexthar. The Drakhan swarm approached with its usual overwhelming numbers. Council forces appeared to retreat, falling back in disarray. The swarm pursued, sensing victory. They flew directly into a minefield that Yuna had spent 2 days preparing. Thousands of Drakhan vessels exploded simultaneously. Before they could recover, council ships emerged from concealment and attacked from 6 directions at once. The swarm tried to adapt, but Yuna had already moved to the next phase. She deliberately sacrificed 3 damaged ships, using them as decoys, while her main force struck at the swarm's command clusters. It was brutal. It was ruthless. It was effective. The swarm broke and retreated for the first time since the conflict began. Over the next month, Yuna employed every tactic the Accords prohibited. She used psychological warfare, broadcasting sounds that disrupted swarm coordination. She implemented scorched earth policies, destroying resources the swarm could consume. She set ambushes in civilian areas that had been evacuated. The council observers documented everything, their reports filled with disturbed language about human methods. But they could not argue with the results. The swarm's advance stopped, then reversed, then collapsed entirely. 3 months after Yuna took command, the Drakhan swarm retreated from council space. They left behind devastation, but they had been stopped. Billions of lives saved. The victory celebration on the council station was subdued. The aliens were grateful, yes, but also shaken by what they had witnessed. Vexthara approached Ji-hoon during the ceremony. The insectoid's mandibles moved in, what Ji-hoon had learned to recognize as discomfort. Captain Ji-hoon, I owe you an apology, Vexthara said. I prosecuted you for barbarism. I believed your methods represented cruelty. I understand now that I was wrong. Ji-hoon shook his head. You were not wrong. Our methods are cruel. They are barbaric. We do not enjoy them. Then why? Because we have to, Ji-hoon interrupted. We do not want to fight this way. We want to live in a galaxy where the Accords work, where combat is civilized and honor matters more than victory. But that galaxy does not exist yet. Maybe it will someday. He looked at the celebration around them, at the species that had survived, because humans knew how to be brutal. Until then, someone needs to know how to fight dirty. Someone needs to be willing to make the hard choices. That is humanity's role in this alliance. We are the ones who do what must be done, even when it costs us your respect. Vexthara's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. You have earned more than respect, Captain. You have earned our gratitude and our understanding. Months later, young humans from across Earth applied to the newly established Terran Military Academy. But now, they were joined by aliens, species from across the galaxy sending their best soldiers to learn from humanity. Minho found himself teaching a class of mixed species recruits. He showed them how to set ambushes, how to use terrain, how to fight when outnumbered. The aliens struggled with concepts that humans found instinctive, but they learned. Hana worked with council diplomats to formalize the alternative combat recognition framework. 3 other species had already petitioned for similar status. The galaxy was changing. In his quarters on the Resolute, Ji-hoon reviewed the final reports from the Drakon conflict. General Yuna had submitted detailed documentation of every Terran protocol employed. The council had reviewed each one. Some they approved, some they questioned, but none were rejected. Ambassador Tejo sent him a message. It was brief. We did not bring peace to the galaxy. We brought the capacity to survive. That is enough. Ji-hoon thought about that for a long time. He thought about the colonists on Outer Rim 7, alive because he had broken the rules. He thought about the billions saved from the Drakon swarm because humanity knew how to fight wars the galaxy found unconscionable. He thought about his grandfather, who had done terrible things in the resource wars so that future generations could live. Humanity had not joined the Galactic Alliance to be liked. They had joined to survive. And in teaching the galaxy how to survive, they had found their purpose. The stars outside his window looked the same as always. Vast, beautiful, and dangerous. But now the galaxy knew that when danger came, humanity would be ready. Not because they wanted to be, because they had to be, because they were survivors. And sometimes, that was exactly what the universe needed.